I have a few announcements I thought we could get started with. We are on our last part of the Satipaṭṭhāna Sutta, which it's incredible. I'm happy to send you a link to it if you like, but um, so I'm in this class and I've been in it since last summer. We study all of these different suttas and it goes, I mean, it's not super fast, it's a year long. So we're breaking apart all of these suttas and deepening our understanding. We started with the Satipaṭṭhāna because of its foundational nature in mindfulness, and there's just so much work everybody can do in mindfulness. If we spent our whole life aspiring to be more mindful, it would be a life well lived. And there's something about this sutta in particular that cuts through so much bullshit that so when I was studying it, I was really called to offer insight meditation to us as a community. We don't have an insight center here locally. Um, so I'm sharing this because while we are going to be finishing up today, and I can send you the sutta if you want, it's not that long, and we've spent like the better part of 3 months studying it. And again, we could spend a whole lifetime here. So know that we will continue to come back to parts of mindfulness. How Tuesday, Thursday looks going forward, I think we'll probably bob back and forth between mindfulness and insight. So if you have strong preferences for like, hey, Monday or Tuesdays, I really want to do mindfulness, Thursdays, I really want to do insight, like we can talk about it, or maybe we just like kind of go with the flow and see how it goes. But it's really cool. To me, I felt really called to offer this because it is, while I've been studying it, I feel like there's so much opportunity to apply the learnings over time. So I don't know, I just feel like it's kind of momentous. I don't want to build it up to be anything bigger than it is, but I've really enjoyed our time together. So thanks for being here and thanks for your presence. One other thing that I will mention, I got an email from Patreon about a week ago, and I've been trying not to be super reactive to it, but Patreon and their relationship with Apple, Apple is starting to charge Patreon 30% for creators' content. So Patreon is a platform that mostly creators, like content creators, use. I wanted to use it because it's easy and it's free. It used to be free at least, so we could post content and potentially use it as a group chat. And it's nice for payment processing. Like if you've been called to offer dana, it's really easy to set that up. But with this increase, and we're a really small organization, I mean, like you're looking at her, um, I think I'm going to discontinue the Patreon. So sorry if it's like a little bit of whiplash, but I will be starting up a WhatsApp group chat, stopping the Patreon probably within the next week or so. And if you still are feeling called to donate, I still have the WhatsApp or the Venmo. So I've been doing a little bit of research. If you like to do the Venmos on a monthly basis, you can kind of set it and forget it. You can do that through my personal Venmo, like you can set it up and it'll just go. Or if you prefer the ad hocs, you can still do that. You can do that to my personal, or you can do that to the Insight one. It really just depends on what you like, what your personal preference is. And one other thing on dana, I think I mentioned this a long time ago. Dana is, this is, I don't want this to be like a payment for services. Dana comes from like your own generosity. And so generosity for some folks is exactly what we're looking at right here. It's practicing in community and being this spiritual support so that we have a container that we can go to reliably. If you feel called to contribute in other ways, so energy is a beautiful way, presence is a beautiful way, monetary support is another way that you can support through generosity. And it just goes to support things like the Zoom costs, that like our annual subscription here, and our rent costs for Helium Restore. As is evidenced today, I know that the Zoom has been a really, really popular option. and I am moving on May 15th to the country. So I might be toying with only making this a Zoom offering. I want to be here if people will use the space, but if Zoom works for everybody, that could further lower our costs. And already looking, I have 8 acres of farmland, so I'm already looking at spaces to build like a yurt or something like that, so we could play around with like monthly sits and have a community space where, everybody can enjoy it. So I have felt so full and um, accountable to the application of this learning. And I couldn't have done that without you. I'm getting a little emotional. I wasn't sure if anybody would show up, and it really means a lot to me that we get to practice this together. And I've also shared this before. I don't have all the answers. I barely have like a few of the answers. So to be able to feel confident and confident in a vulnerable way, confident in that I can show up in the things that I have conviction in, and confident to know that if I fumble, not if, when I have fumbled many times in sharing these teachings and trying to interpret them in a modern way that makes sense for us, it just has really, really meant a lot to me. So I know that was like a long spiel before our mindfulness sit, but I just want to say deepest thanks and gratitude. And as we continue to evolve, I hope you can continue to feel supported and nourished by this offering. So thank you so much. If your eyes have been open for that time, I welcome you to start to shut them down. Notice what is here. Reflect on how far we've come together as a community. A lot of times we use the metaphor of a path. And if you've ever walked a challenging road before, quite literally, I think about the hardest thing I've ever done physically was climb a mountain, a literal mountain. And I did that with a friend. There were parts of that journey where she wanted to turn back. And I said, let's keep going. We're here. And there was times that I wanted to turn back. And she said, no, we're doing this together. And that is so incredibly powerful. You are the one who has to take every step forward, or in a lot of cases, sideways or backtracking. But the safety net of community can motivate you. When some of us are falling behind, we get to see and be motivated by those who are continuing on. It's not a jealous or envious motivation. It is that we can see somebody has done it before us. That's the power of the Buddha, if you remember. It's not that he attained enlightenment. It's that he attained enlightenment and shared the journey with others so they could see it for themselves. Today we contemplate Dukkha, the final part of our Sutta study. Dukkha, or one of my teachers who is studied in Sanskrit and Pali would say Dukkha. He really emphasizes the ha. Most often translated to suffering. My teacher challenged me, others, to think about dukkha in the more complete translation, or the more accurate translation, as non-satisfied or unsatisfied. All conditioned, these are his words, all conditioned things are dukkha. And in this way, pleasant and unpleasant things and experiences are dukkha because they are unreliable and unsatisfying. So when you think about the word suffering, many of us go to the unpleasant, the pain. But when we balance that out with unsatisfying, that can also be lust or the seeking of pleasure. Dukkha, unsatisfying suffering, exists because experiences and things are unreliable. Things are inherently going to change, and that creates dukkha. Impermanence causes dukkha. And this realization can help us understand that we need to find sustained satisfaction. And that likely will not come from the material world. Material world makes it easier when we've talked about karma in the past. It's really difficult to find liberation, enlightenment, freedom, whatever your word is, if we don't have physical safety, if we do not have nourishment, if we do not have the ability to get out of fight or flight. It's not that liberation is impossible, but it becomes a lot harder. So this practice, this contemplation for today, is to recognize, where does dissatisfaction exist in my particular life? What is the origin of that suffering? Is it in the material world, in the body? Is it in the identification of a fixed self? Spend a little bit of time here. The recognition of suffering is not something we do for avoidance of that suffering. We see it and we start to investigate the root causes or the arising of that suffering. Has it come from the conditions of our life? That karma that follows us, or if you like the word epigenetics, or your gene pool, whatever it might be, that might truly manifest as pain in the body, relative ability or disability in the body, the way that the body is seen in greater society that causes suffering, systemic racism, prejudice, anti-feminism. Those are real, and they cause real suffering. Avoiding suffering doesn't cure it. We see it and we deeply understand it. And we work towards the reduction of the conditioning. We don't work towards the reduction of the suffering. We work towards the reduction of the condition. Remember that the suffering arises from all conditioning. So that when we naturally change the conditions, suffering also naturally subsides. When suffering inevitably comes back in, unless we've completely, skillfully reduced or removed those conditions, know that suffering will arise. And we skillfully apply all of our mindfulness, our spaciousness, our non-clinging to work through that suffering and hopefully change the conditions which allowed for its arising. This brings the whole thing full circle. So as we spend the rest of our time together, it might be in the simple recognition when suffering arises, clinging, lust, aversion, all of those other things, pain in the body, pain in society. We start to investigate the roots or the conditions of the arising of suffering, and we may start to apply some questioning into why that condition exists. How can we more skillfully navigate this thing, this life, whatever it is that we're doing here, to maybe change the condition so less suffering arises naturally in the future. This is the practice today. We will find our close for practice today. One final reflection on dukkha. The Four Noble Truths. These are the laws of Dhamma or Dharma. Suffering exists, period. Suffering arises from the conditions that create that suffering. By better understanding our conditioning, working with our karma, we can more skillfully move through this world, create conditionings that give you opportunity for liberation, for freedom, for living in a connected heart space. Materialism, clinging, the fixed self, all of that starts to melt away into the periphery when we find out what is really important to us and let that be your path to liberation. Hands to heart center if that serves you. We close. May the merits of this practice be of benefit to all sentient beings, ourselves included in the circle of compassion. And thank you so much for your practice. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a really beautiful day.